Hey, brothers and sisters. I'm going to be reading pretty loud here just to speak over the sound of the wind. I'm Michelle, and I'm reading Jim Stevens' book. And what it is, they're 101 proofs for the existence of God. So I am going to be reading proof number 73. It's called Punctuated Equilibrium. Okay. Many people have never even heard of the theory of punctuated equilibrium, but it has been around since 1972, and it spells the end of Darwinism as you know it. As I have explained fully before in Chapter 18, the fossil record, Chapter 58, the Cambrian explosion, and Chapter 64, missing links. There is no evidence in the fossil record for Darwinism for the slow and gradual emergence of new species from previous species by passing through transitional forms. Even Darwin himself recognized this, but he blamed an inadequate fossil record ever since Darwin, as more and more fossils were discovered without any transitional forms. Evolutionists found this only an uninteresting observation, but not disproof, if they acknowledged it at all. Certainly, they kept it an unspoken secret, knowing it could damage belief in Darwinism. Here are two quotes from Newsweek magazine back in 1980. The missing link between man and the apes, whose absence has comforted religious fundamentalists since the days of Darwin, is merely the most glamorous of a whole hierarchy of phantom creatures. In the fossil record, missing links are the rule. The story of life is as disjointed as a silent newsreel, in which species succeed one another as abruptly as Balkan prime ministers. The more scientists have searched for the transitional forms between species, the more they have been frustrated. Also, evidence from fossils now points overwhelmingly away from classical Darwinism, which most Americans learned in high school. Increasingly, scientists now believe that species change little for millions of years and then evolve quickly in a kind of quantum leap. This theory is still being worked out by them. You didn't know that evolutionists don't believe in Darwinism anymore, did you? Did you hear that? They are trying to work out a new theory because they no longer believe in Darwinism. Darwinism actually began to die out among paleontologists even earlier in 1954, when Ernst Mayr published his paper, Change of Genetic Environment and Evolution. Mayr showed that Darwin's theory of slow and gradual evolution could not work in real life if there were large numbers of a given species. He proposed allopatric speciation as the process of evolution, and it was generally accepted by 1972. Okay, let's hear what this is about. Allopatric speciation suggests that species with large central populations are stabilized by their large volume and the process of gene flow. New and even beneficial mutations are diluted by the population's large size, and they're unable to reach fixation due to such factors as constantly changing environments. If this is the case, then the transformation of whole lineages should be rare, as the fossil record indicates. After 120 years of observing the fossil record, the evolutionists finally recognized and publicly admitted that any given species does not change much, if at all, for millions upon millions of years. Have you seen that in your textbooks yet? True believers that they are, this didn't stop them. Darwin's theory of evolution had predicted that there would be slow and gradual changes upward over time, resulting in many new species, but this never showed up in the fossil record. Never. Rather than say that the theory of evolution was wrong, they decided that the slow and gradual must have been wrong. But isn't that the same thing, Jim says? They didn't think to tell every school teacher after about 1954 that when they are teaching kids about slow and gradual evolution, that it's false. The evolutionists let the teachers go on teaching Darwinian evolution that they themselves no longer believe, and they have recognized it as being false. In 1972, paleontologists Niles Eldredge and Stephen J. Gould published a landmark paper developing this theory, and they called it Punctuated Equilibria. Their paper built upon Ernst Mayer's theory of geographic speciation. Michael Lerner's theories of developmental and genetic homeostasis as well. They included Michael Lerner's theories of developmental and genetic homeostasis, as well as their own empirical research. Eldredge and Gould proposed that the degree of gradualism commonly attributed to Charles Darwin is virtually non-existent in the fossil record, and that stasis dominates the history of most fossil species. Let me add my own emphasis to double the impact. Darwinian gradualism is virtually non-existent, and Jim has underlined virtually non-existent. Or in other words, we can say it's the same as non-existent. The theory of punctuated equilibrium states that a species will stay almost exactly the same for millions of years, or in other words, in stasis or equilibrium, until there are sudden punctuated changes of a huge degree, and then a whole new species emerges in a very short period of time. I would say that sounds like something that happens in a cartoon. The original species will probably continue to exist, but a new daughter species will spring up suddenly in some isolated location from a small population. Only a small group of individuals could change so radically in a short geological time frame into a completely new species. Here is an astounding statement which is found in Wikipedia in the Punctuated Equilibrium article, the section called Stasis. Before Eldridge and Gould alerted their colleagues to the prominence of stasis in the fossil record, most evolutionists considered stasis to be rare or unimportant. Darwinism predicts there is slow and gradual change over time, and yet Wikipedia exposes the fact that nothing was changing over time, and yet the scientists thought it was unimportant as well. This admission and the new theory obviously turns Darwinism on its head. However, evolutionists, even if they don't see any evidence, still believe it is a truth. Evolution is still true, even if they can't find any evidence yet. Wow. Besides, they concluded, there was never any real requirement that the changes be slow and gradual. At a conference in mid-October at Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History, the majority of 160 of the world's top paleontologists and anatomists, evolutionary geneticists, and developmental biologists supported some form of this theory of punctuated equilibria. Let me say that more clearly for you, Jim says. A majority of the world's top scientists agreed in 1980 that Darwinism, as it was taught to you in school, is false. Hence my conclusion, Darwinism has died. Therefore, for teachers to teach that scientists believe in Darwinism has been false since at least 1980, which is 36 years and counting. Punctuated equilibrium accounts for the fossil record much better than Darwinism. But you are probably asking yourself, how could such massive changes evolve a new species in a short period of time if it hasn't happened over millions of years already? The new theory explains this by saying that the massive changes take place in small fringe populations that get isolated from the larger populations. The huge changes take place in a short geologic period of time, or in other words, a few thousand years, through processes something like inbreeding and major environmental shifts. This is very helpful because it explains why there are no transitional fossils, no missing links. The populations were isolated, and also there were relatively few individuals. Therefore, they were less likely to leave fossils in the record. It's also very helpful for evolutionists because it actually predicts that you won't find any proof that is true. The fossils you need to prove it's true just don't exist. So conveniently, you won't be able to find any evidence that the theory is false either. Many philosophers of science accept a definition of a valid scientific theory as one that is based upon A, repeatable observations, B, one that is subject to testing and making accurate predictions, and C, one that is falsifiable. The punctuationists clearly have some problems having a valid scientific theory. Random mutation and natural selection cannot be shown to create any new species, even over very long periods of time. So the best new theory evolutionists have come up with is that it must happen over a very short period of time. Their theorized descriptions come off sounding very scientific and very complicated, but the bottom line is that there is no evidence that the process actually works or could work. Here is an astounding statement by an evolutionist. The core observation that once most species show up in the fossil record, they exhibit hardly any change at all, not uncommonly remaining essentially static for millions of years, was made 150 years ago and was known to Darwin, but little was made of it until comparatively recently. The theory of evolution predicts slow and gradual change over time, so that's clear. The theory of evolution predicts slow and gradual change over time. However, they have made the core observation for the last 150 years that this was not happening, and yet little was made of it. So this was not happening at all, capital N, capital O, capital T. So, do they really call themselves scientists? Now we admit that evolution is more of a fits and starts affair than we used to think. But this hardly seems to be the stuff of revolution. That quote is from Niles Eldredge, who came up with punctuated equilibrium. He can say it is no big deal, but it means traditional Darwinism is dying out, if it's not already dead. To me, that is certainly very revolutionary. Why? Because all the schools teaching Darwinism need to stop it right now. Probably it will take time, but the handwriting is already on the wall. Darwinism is dead. What you and I learned in school and what is still being taught today is capital A, capital F, capital A, capital L, capital S, capital E. And they know it. And they don't have any viable proof for their latest theory either. They have just a blind faith, and they hope they can find some other mechanism in the future to make the theory come true without God. Wow, does that sound scientific? They hope that some truth will just appear. Hi. I thought you should know that many of the scientists have admitted to themselves this since 1972. We believers can see that evolutionism is pure faith. It's not science, even if scientists can't see it, or maybe they just don't want to admit it. Actually, their faith is less scientific than someone's faith that there is a creator God. The theory of a creator better explains the scientific facts. Get this. The theory of a creator better explains the scientific facts. Wow. Maybe if evolutionists keep researching, they'll eventually find God, but only if they are willing to go where the evidence leads them. This is the issue. The only truly scientific conclusion is that there must be God. All right. That was great. That was great. Thank you so much, Jim, for that. Right. Okay, so everyone take care, and I'll see you another time.